because this is not its butt. It's its shoulder, but it's called the Boston butt. And so that leads people constantly to being pretty confused about what we're talking about. I don't know why it's the Boston butt. You also hear pork butt, but it's the shoulder cut that's often used for barbecue as well if you're not going to do a whole hog. And so a lot of times a person will just get these. I hear Allen and Son exclusively makes butt barbecue. They buy these at mass amounts and do that as barbecue. But this is a special cut because it's the shoulder that's layered with a lot of fat, and it's incredibly versatile. So you can do kind of like, you can do dry heat, you can do braising, you can do the roast, you could do barbecue, and it's going to come out pretty good every single way you cook it. So it's incredibly versatile.
Can you smoke it?
Yeah, exactly. Which is like North Carolina barbecue is usually smoked pork shoulder. But so you have a lot of options, and it's a kind of unique thing in pork because it's so marbled with fat, whereas it's called chuck on beef, and it can be kind of marbled, but it's going to be leaner and drier, and it's not going to be nearly as versatile. But with pork, it's particularly versatile. So here's an example of one that we could keep the skin on. If you wanted to make barbecue, for example, you have this really nice protective coating with fat on it that'll drip over the whole animal, and you can keep it that way. Otherwise, we could trim off the skin and have a similar thing.
Can you cut it smaller? Is there a bone in there?
Absolutely. So when I prepare it, I always take this bone off, which isn't necessary, but for a person to then cut it up might be a little confusing. Yeah. After you cook it, often you could probably pry that away, but it's about, I guess, what people are accustomed to. So generally, this bone is off, which is sort of referred to as its neck bone, as much as a pig has a neck, I guess. So it's flat on top, or not really flat, but it sits on top, if you can see that. So this is about like muscle memory of sort of knowing that shape, and then you keep the knife really tight to those bones. And so I can peel it off here without cutting into the meat and losing a lot of meat. It's basically what I'm aiming at. And then this is where the head connects. So as I get down here, it flares out a bit because we have this joint right here where that head connects to, so it can move. So I have to cut much wider all of a sudden and get around this wider portion.
It's called a butt because the barrels that they transported them in way back were called butts.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they came from Boston?
I think the barrels originated in Boston.
Cool. So that is why we're all confused. Barrels. So now this is bone off, see that? Fits right in there. I've cut it with very minimal stuff stuck onto it. I'm not going to spend time trimming this off. This I'm going to make stock out of, and I'm going to pull off the bone and eat then. You know what I mean? As opposed to spending a lot of time trimming away tiny bits of meat. But what I'm trying to do is cut as little off with the bone as possible. If I were to mess up and take a big chunk off, cut too low, then I'll just trim it away. Take it back off and throw it in the grinder then. But like, you're going for this sort of like smooth surface that doesn't have gashes out of it to get as much as possible. But like I said, we've got this thing here that dips in, so you have to remove that bigger. And then once again, we've got the very outside surface. This is when we cut its head off upon slaughtering it. I'm going to trim that off and just chuck it. Like I said, we compost all of that. And does anybody have a preference? Unfortunately, when these pigs do have black coloring, the skin looks dirty. And that's just like, that's why they're not used in commercial. This is just its pigmentation. And we do have the same effect. We'd have a pink looking one if it was a pink pig. But that's its pigment. So often on these, I will take the skin off because people might feel confused.
When I've gotten yours, I've really appreciated how much of the fat you keep on it. Actually, because when you buy it in the store, you're getting so little of that.
Right.
And I don't know if that makes it better tasting in the end, or the fat just tastes so good.
I definitely think it makes it taste better. I think when you're raising hogs free range, you're giving them a diverse diet, it's one of the major benefits, and that fat is far healthier for you than it would be otherwise, and I believe it's much healthier for you than like vegetable oils and things like that. And so I think one of the big assets of these animals is their fat, and that I agree that you should try to, like, when you're cooking it, you don't have to eat it all if you don't want to eat it all, but it's certainly good for the cooking. And then, you know, like my extended family will just eat that fat straight up. It's like nice.
So good. Or save it and cook it with your greens or something.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So in this case, you can see this is a Boston butt with all the fat on, skin off. And depending on how fat the animal is, I'll decide whether to then trim the Boston butt further. I think a lot of the people who get meat from us do like to get an extra fat cap on it, but not everybody does. So you're having to kind of guess as to what.
But they can always trim it off.
They can.
But they probably feel like they paid for it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you kind of having to play that line. So when I look at this, I think this is a really nice fat cap, except this seems excessive to me. This like ridge. So I'll just take my knife and trim that down.
Particularly fatty pig or?
No, I'd say this is on the quite lean side as far as these go. I've certainly slaughtered people's hogs. We've had some that get bigger, that this will be like that, like no joke.